If you're wanting to get started with Notion in 2024 and you're doing your best to fight overwhelm, this video is for you. I'll be sharing the basic blocks, media blocks, pages, and just the very beginnings of databases in this video. This should give you everything you need to start your very own productivity system that is simple yet effective. If you'd like to see me cover more advanced topics related to Notion, please comment down below, give this video a like, and let me know what you'd like me to talk about, and I will be sure to get on that. My name is Laura, and I'm a longtime user and lover of all things Notion related. From functionality to aesthetics to tips and tricks, I'll be covering everything I know and love from Notion and everything I'm learning along with these new updates. If this sounds like fun to you, it would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe and stay tuned for more videos. Without any further ado, let's get into this video. Once you've made your Notion account and created a blank page, this is something similar to what you might see. For now, let me first introduce you to the basic blocks. By default, you'll create a text block. If you want to say hello world, going from here, it's very easy to create bullet points by just typing a dash and hitting space. You can change bullet points into numbered lists by typing the number 1 followed by a period, hitting space, and it'll replace the bullet point. Let's say you wanted to turn this numbered list back into a bullet point. A quick way to do that is to click and drag, select with these 6 dots. This menu that will open up will allow you to turn into, and then you can pick from all of these basic blocks that will go into, make it a bulleted list. Another easy shortcut to create a formatted text is the brackets. So you just open bracket, close bracket, and then hit space, and that should give you a checkbox. I forget about the bracket shortcut, so one thing that I like to do is just type the / and then I'll just type checkbox. Another shortcut I find useful is the divider. So you can just type 3 dashes and you'll get some structure to your page. This is really nice for when you're trying to separate sections of notes or meeting notes, something like that. And commonly in notes, you'll have different sections of notes, right? In these cases, you'll most likely want to be using headings or toggle headings. And I'll explain the difference in a second, but to make the biggest heading or heading 1, you'll just type / H1, and that will be the shortcut to bring you up heading 1. There is also a heading 2 and there's a heading 3. You can type H2 and then for heading 3, and then we can just put toggle headings. What you'll notice here is that there is a little table of contents popping up as you create headings, and once you have really long documents, this can become very, very helpful. I'm using the arrow keys to go between different blocks, but so I'll go to the toggle heading block, and a really easy way to create toggles. I wish I would have known sooner. You can just type the > symbol, press space, and there you have it. It's a toggle heading. So you can do that on any of the headings, and you can obviously do this on the text as well. So if I do numbered list and I make that a toggle, it won't automatically, unless something is already indented within it, it won't include the stuff under it. But let's say I wanted to include it, I could just click and drag, select those 2 blocks, click and drag them inside of numbered list. And then we can hide them away. That's the really nice part. Right away, you get this organizational structure. If you want to highlight something within your space, let's say like a reminders block or an action items block, a really nice block to use is the callout block. So I just typed / again. This will be your best friend when you're first starting out because you can look up literally anything. I like to use it a lot of the times as a sticky note. So I'll put a pin in it and then make it look yellow like a post-it, and then I will just type in here, and then you can tab to indent. These blocks can also be a really fun way to customize your page. A lot of the times I'll use callouts as a fun way to add some color. If you need to find something quickly and you want to remind yourself of it, callouts are very useful in that sense. Another way to break up the monotony is the quote block. It's an interesting way that I've found to actually make an agenda, make a quote block with indented bullet points within it, things like that. You can make another quote block, and the nice part is that the lines between the quote blocks will not join. So you can kind of group visually some items like action items together, whether that is for a specific person. So yeah, I think you get the gist. But just to recap, we have our text block, our to-do list, our 3 headings. The table is probably what you'd expect it to be, but we'll get on into that later. We made a bulleted list, a numbered list, a toggle list. We can make anything into a toggle. And we made some quotes. I shared some ways that quotes could be helpful for different situations. There's also the divider, which can be really nice to structure, give your page some structure. And then link to page we'll go into a little bit later once we've dealt with pages. And then I showed you how to make a call out. So that looks all good. So let's move on to chapter 2, pages. Think of pages like folders when you're just starting out. If you have several areas of your life and work and projects that you want to organize, I highly recommend setting up pages that hold the sub-pages, that those main pages act like folders for the sub-pages. That's just a fun pro tip I wanted to mention in the very beginning before you go wild making all your pages. So starting off with the suggestions at the bottom of the page, I'm just going to delete this so that they show up again. You have Ask AI, Dictate, which is just using your voice to write out text, and then we have a to-do list, a weekly plan, and a journal. And these three are all very simple. If we click on them, they're just very simple places to get you started. So weekly plan just includes some toggle headings, but if we check out journal, it's just like a text block based template for you to start using. And these can be very helpful when you're starting out and you have no idea what you can do with this awesome tool. And then table, this page will be the database. Unfortunately, when you select table for your page, it's really hard to just undo that action. So I just made a new blank page, but now you know. I recommend an inline database when you're just starting out, because that way you can have notes above and below that database in line on the page and not have to like click in and out of the database just to work on the database. I hope that makes sense. One of the first things I like to do with a new page is add an icon. So I'll just add my little plant pot there. I go to these three dots at the top right and select small text, full width, and I usually change the font. Sometimes I forget, but this will make the page take up the width of your screen or your device. Another easy way to customize your page is to hover over this icon area, the title area, and add a cover. You can also change the colors. There's also gradients. Unsplash is great. You can upload your own file. You can paste a link to an image. Of course, you can search on Unsplash. So if I wanted a potted plant, oh, that's super cute. All right, I'll just reposition this. So a little bit, save position. And there you have a little start to customizing your first page. Another way that you can easily customize your page is to give it some structure. An easy way we can do this is with columns. It used to be that you could only add columns by, let's say, let's just put a heading block here, another heading block. The only way that you could add columns would be to click and drag, and that is still a perfectly fine way to add columns. But if you know how many columns you would like initially and you don't really need to play around with it, a good way is to just put in 2 to, I believe, 5. So we'll do 5 columns, and now we can either make smaller headings, or we can hover over with the 6 dots, drag this block over, and you'll see that as we hover, vertical lines will indicate that you're going to add another column. So we can even add 7 columns if you really want to go wild with the columns. I like to stick to between 2 columns and 3 or 4 columns max. If I need separate items in a row, I could have put this in 9 or 8 columns, but I chose to just leave it on one line because I just think it looks a little cleaner. If we want to make columns within columns, which is also pretty easy, go to your main column heading, press enter, and then now you can type 2C. It splits the column further. Another thing that I like to do when, let's say, I don't like using the bigger headings and I still want some hierarchy, it won't show up in the table of contents, but one thing I like to do is use bolded text to serve as kind of like a fake heading 4. So I'll just bold my text and type in, and then I can hop over here, bold my text by Command B, and that is just a quick and easy way to structure your pages. If I have another page, like let's say we had Page Basics is just my notes for this video, so I can link that in here by pressing the @ sign, and then I can type in Page Basics, and then you can see that there's a little sneak peek of what I think this title might be. I might change it, but so I'll tag Page Basics in here. What is nice about it is that you can tag multiple pages in one line of text. That's also how I made my navigation bar. It's just a synchronized block with linked pages separated by pipes. So let's head back and we can tag this page, and you can see that this is one line. Obviously, if you want them on separate lines, you can always hit enter, and now these are separate blocks. But yeah, that's a little introduction to Notion page structure and ways that you can play around with your page structure. Let's move on to media blocks. If you type in media after /, you see that the whole section of media blocks kind of just pops up. When you click on image, this is what you'll see. So you can upload your own file, which will open your file explorer. You can embed a link, so this can be like a picture from, let's say, Pinterest. A nice feature that Notion includes is the ability to search Unsplash right in the app. I kind of like this one. It's very colorful, very cute. We'll include that. And one thing right away that you'll notice is that if you have an image on a page with no columns, it can be quite large. One thing we'll do is just put 3 columns here like we learned in the previous section, and just click and drag by the 6 dots this image. And already we have a little bit more breathing room with this image. And you can always hover over the vertical separation and scale down the image further if you need to. So let's go back to media. Web bookmark is really helpful too. I'm just going to go ahead and type in pinterest.com. And what you'll see is that a little description of the Pinterest website comes up. One weird thing that's been happening to me though is that this button to add a web bookmark is staying. I don't know if anyone else has been having this bug, but what I usually do is delete it and then undo. I believe if you have a link copied from the internet, you can create a bookmark. It actually turns out better than just typing in the link. Moving on, so we have media. You can embed a video. We're on my YouTube channel. Let's just click this database automation video and we'll grab this link, copy it, and then we'll paste the video link in here, embed the video. And this is why I like having columns. There's so much space to do a bunch of things on the same page. So now we have audio. So this you can upload a file, like an MP3 file, or you can embed a link to audio as well. One thing about the code blocks is I feel like they just belong a little bit more in the basic blocks because it's not code that you can run or anything. So if I type in Python, print hello world, that will highlight as it would in a Python script. And if I change this to something like bash, what I did was I typed in bash. You'll see that depending on the programming language, different words, syntax will highlight and others will not. So anyway, this is not code that can run unless it's Mermaid code, but I can get into that in a different video. This is just code for the purpose of showing the syntax. The last media block that we can add is a file. Think like PDFs, CSVs, things like that, or embed a link to a PDF. So I just found a link to a PDF learning kanji. So you can see there's a really great preview that pops up and you can scroll through it in the app. You can also resize it. It's a little finicky, so I would just recommend opening it, clicking on view the original, and this will open in a browser and you can see it there. That wraps up the media blocks. Alrighty, so since this video is not meant to cause overwhelm, I'll only be going through the table view of the databases. I've renamed my tutorial page, and I'm just going to do this right in here so that you can see the advantage of having an inline database versus a full page database. Before we get into that, I want to start off with a very simple table. So to add a table, /table, right away you'll see you have a 2x3 table, and you can always hover over the right to add more columns, and hover over the bottom to add more rows. These arrows are meant to fit the table to the page's width. Let's just do a weekly plan. Like I mentioned, these 2 arrows are really helpful because I missed a day, but I can just shrink and fit the whole table into the page width with that button. Now with options, you can see that we have options to set a header row and a header column. An easy way you can repeat an entry is by copying and then selecting the places you want to copy it to. This kind of saves the headache of having to write things over and over again or copying and pasting several times. So let's go ahead and do that for the rest of the agenda. By clicking this plus button, we can add an entry below whatever block we're currently on. So I'll put another divider here. Let's move on to databases. Like I mentioned, it's really helpful to have an inline database. You'll see that there are 2 options here for database inline and a database as a full page. To show you kind of why I prefer inline databases, I'll show you the full page first. This is what happens when you have a full page database. So I'll just call this full page DB for database. I'm clicking on the title. I can't add any text above or below it because it's just a page with a database in it, and that's what it's limited to. This is its own page, and when you click into it, it's only going to be a database. I usually only use inline databases unless I'm trying to contain something very specific in its own page and I don't need any information around it. Let's just hover over, click to add something below it, add my divider, and then I'll show you how I add a database inline. I just type in DB after the / and an inline database will be the first default option. What I wanted to share with you in this video is the simple column types that you can use in your databases. So let's head on over to first the title. This is just the name of the entry. This is actually a required property. So for example, there's a date property. You can't have a table with only a date property in it. You at least have to have the title. Entry number 1 and then title property. Tags is the other default column that you'll see. So if you go to tags and you click on it and hit edit property, you'll see that the type of property this is a multi-select. So this means that if you have options like orange, banana, oh, that actually was orange. Okay. Blueberry, I don't know. For each entry, you will be able to multi-select. You can select all of these or one of these. If I hit the plus arrow next to tags, I'll be able to add a new property. So we'll just see, we're gonna skip over the AI for now. It can be very powerful, but we're not going to get into it in this video just yet. I had to say that like 3 times. Okay. Our first property is the text property. So up here, we can just leave it text property and then type something like notes go here. Just as an example of what you can do with it, let's keep going down the line. So we have number. Number is really cool because you can actually set the format of the number. For example, if you're doing something with finances, you can set US dollar or whatever your currency type is in this format. So let's say you have a budget of like $300 for your groceries every month. We can type 300 in here. You can change the color even, so we'll change it to a nice purple. Show the number or not, but let's just put in for this entry example like 250, and you'll see that the bar takes up the percentage out of 300 in this property. Moving on to the next property, a select property. So a select property is very similar to a multi-select, as you would expect. How you delete a column is just click on the column, delete property. It'll confirm that you want to delete it. A really helpful way to make more properties based off other properties is to duplicate them. So here you can duplicate this property tags. Now it's called tags1, but we'll call it select because that's what it'll be. So I'll edit the property, I'll go to select. Now what we'll see is that if I were to click banana and then orange, apple, blueberry, you'll see that only one of the options is going to be selected at a given time. So that is the main difference between, let's call this multi-select, and let's move on to the next. Status is basically a type of select property that can also be viewed as a checkbox, and it has 3 categories. So there's to do, in progress, and complete. So one thing I like to do, add something like on hold, wrapping up, and done is a way that you can set up a status category for your tasks. The nice thing about status is that you can edit the property and show it as a checkbox. So it'll be a minus if it's somewhere in progress, and if it's completely done, it'll be a check mark. If it's not started, it will be an empty checkbox. So let's keep moving. Date, you can choose the date of today, for example. You can actually type in natural language dates, and then it will fill in the appropriate date. You can also have a range of dates if you want to include an end date, and we can also include the time. So let's say from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. we have something going on. And then we can also set reminders. So yeah, that's date. Person is just an actual person's account in Notion, and then you can have people that are assigned to a certain task. Okay, files and media. This is kind of just like the media blocks, except you can only choose a file or embed a link. A checkbox, you guessed it, it's a checkbox. Let's move on. You can have a URL. You can show the full URL if it's a long, let's say it's a link to a product on Amazon and it's a very long link. You can hide the full URL and it'll show a shortened version of it. Next, we have email. You guessed it, email. Phone. Formulas, relations, and roll-ups are a little advanced, so I will probably cover those in a separate video if that's of interest. But for now, let's move on to created time. Created time is what it sounds like. It's the time that the entry was created. And then created by is also not editable, just the last edited time. Button is a new one, and I will go into that in another video. I can also go into some use cases for ID in a separate video, but for now, I think that wraps up us getting to know the different properties that databases can have. Please let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to go over, any more advanced topics you'd like me to dive into with you, and I will be happy to do so. If you're interested in template tutorials, updates as they come out, or advanced tips, please be sure to subscribe as I will be sharing those on this channel very soon. See you in the next one.